first went to the pit, there were a big paddy accident. I was only 18. I was on days, and I can remember 7 miners got killed at Bentley. And I went underground to fetch the injured out, and then went back down to fetch all the deceased. That affected me. I still remember 1977 going up that pit lane to Bentley Colliery like it was yesterday.
Where did your mining journey start?
I left school in 1977 in Doncaster. In them days, you either went to Crompton Parkinson's, International Harvesters, you got an apprenticeship at the railway, because when they used to build trains at Doncaster, or you went in pits. Near me, because I live at Doncaster, the nearest one was Bentley Pit, you had Broadworth Pit, Askham Pit. There were loads of pits all around, so I applied for a job at Bentley Pit, didn't hear anything. A friend of my mum's came on one day and said, oh, there's a job at John Carr's Woodyard. So I went there, and I think I was there about 18 weeks, and then Pit sent for me. I can always remember it as if it were yesterday, going up the avenue to Bentley Pit and going into the offices and going to the interview by the personnel manager and being offered a job. And I can remember it like yesterday. The first thing that happened after he'd offered me a job is the NUM delegate came in the office and said, right lad, you're in NUM now, and you'll start paying a pension from day one, and you start paying your subs from day one. And that's how it all started.
What did your early years mining look like?
Me, first thing you did, I was only 17. You weren't allowed to underground or do night. You weren't allowed to work nights till you were 18 in them days. So my first job was working in the office for we used to have under managers, and they go down the pit in the morning, and I'd do sort of clerical stuff and things, and fetch them the sandwiches and the cup of tea when they came out of the pit from canteen, because we had a canteen in them days. And then eventually, after a few months, you went into the stockyard and you learned how they loaded all the materials up to send them down the pit. And then eventually you just get told you're down pit from Monday, you'll be on so-and-so shifts, you'll be a colliery overman. And I started, my very first job underground was, I was put with the team called the PGF team, which is a prevention of gob fires. Now Bentley Colliery was the Barnsley scene, and it was notorious for catching fire. So all around the shaft pillar was on fire all the time. So we used to drill big long holes and inject it with cement, and this used to put the fires out. That was my first job. And then eventually, after I'd been with them for 6 months, you got sent in by, so you'd go on the haulage, so you'd learn all about the haulage, etc. And then eventually you just progressed until, can't remember what age, but I went on to nights then you do your face training. That was your next big move up. Bentley Colliery as well, you used to have a big training centre, and you used to do all your underground training there for all the pits locally. Bentley Colliery was like a trial place where if any new technology came out, it always just go to Bentley first and they'd trial it.
What was your job within the mine?
I went on the coal face, and one of the first jobs I learnt on the coal face was to put what we call packs on. So I'd work with another lad, and I'd be on the tailgate pack, and I'd learned you used to have to build this big pack. It was basically like a dry stone wall, and then you'd fill the middle of it with all rubbish that was sent up to either on a conveyor, steel conveyor that used to come out of the tailgate and go under and load onto the face when they'd drop the rip. So we used to put packs on, and then eventually I came off that and I went on to the chocks. So you'd follow the machine, advance the conveyor and fetch all the chocks in. I don't know how many years I spent doing that, if I'm really honest, but I was quite young when eventually they advertised for colliery officials, deputies. I applied for that and I was successful. Anyway, I did mining craft, mining machinery, and you learnt everything, how to shop fire and do everything as a deputy for 6 months at college. Then you go back to the pit, and then that's when you really learnt how to become a deputy. Or for other deputies, you were assigned to another deputy, and they took you around and taught you. Not forget what you've learnt at college, but now you're going to learn how to do it as well, properly. When I was 21, I also applied for the mines rescue. You wanted to give something back. When I first went to the pit, there was a big paddy accident. I was only 18. I was on days, and I can remember 7 miners got killed at Bentley. And I went underground to fetch the injured out, or to help fetch the injured out, stretchers out, and then went back down to fetch all the deceased people out. That affected me and made me want to give more back, so that's why I applied to become a member of the mines rescue team. So I spent 18 years, I think it was, in the mines rescue, and built my way up to become the captain of the mines rescue team and to lead it and so that was, yeah.
How far below the surface did you have to travel?
I can't remember how deep the shaft was at Bentley, at least 2,000 metres I think. We used to go in a couple of miles, so you'd catch a paddy train, you'd have to go down underground, get your powder, the deputy would carry the debts. As a workman you'd go and get a bag of powder, which is dynamite, and then you'd get on the paddy and then you'd travel in. We used to have a deployment board underground, and it'd tell you, if you were on market, you were called a market man, so you'd go to the deployment board and the overman would phone up another deputy that was underground, and he'd fill all names in and tell you where you were going for that shift.
Did you have to travel so far on a train?
Yeah, you got on a train which was a diesel locomotive, and that used to tow about 60 men in each journey. There used to be 2 of them, one would go to one side of the pit and one would go to the other side of the pit. One would go to Barnsley Seam and one would go to Dunstall Seam, Swallow Wood.
What is the environment like in a deep pit, and what equipment did you need?
Personal equipment, you had a cat lamp, so you could obviously see. You carried what we called a self-rescuer, which would last you for 90 minutes. In the event that there was a fire, you'd put the self-rescuer on, and that would keep you alive till you got out of the smoke for 90 minutes. I used to carry an oil lamp to test for gas. As a workman you carried an oil lamp, but if you banged it that would go out and you couldn't relight it. But as an official you're allowed to relight your own oil lamp.
How do you man coal?
There's quite a few methods. In the early days when I first went to the pit, it was advanced mining. So basically 2 roadways, the face of it about 250-300 metres long, with 2 machines on it in the old days. One machine would travel the full length of the face and back to a certain point, put on what we call a buttock, and then another machine would just go maybe to tailgate and back out of a short run. Then as technology advanced, we used to have a double-ended, a DCMT double-ended conveyor mounted Chapana, and that used to go up and down the face instead of having 2 machines. And chocks got bigger and better. The machines then become remote control as well. You weren't driving it with a handle, you had a remote control. But then technology changed even more, and we used to have retreat coal faces. So they would drive a roadway maybe 1,500 metres, 2,000 metres out, a loader gate and a tailgate, then they'd retreat back. So everything was allowed to collapse behind them. When we advanced faces, we used to set steel arches. When we retreated, we used to have roadways that were roof bolted. As technology went on, we used to put roof bolts in the roof and mesh up the sides, roof bolts in the ribs and mesh up the sides.
What are the dangers of mining, and what is the environment like? Is it hot and humid?
The biggest danger is being complacent. But because we were used to it, a lot of people can't understand how you would go, how you didn't feel claustrophobic, or how you could go down a coal mine and go that deep and travelling that far. If you were in the pit bottom, you were freezing. When you went in by where all the machinery was working, etc., it was hot and humid. So basically you wore a pair of shorts with holes in, they were like a tea bag, and a pair of underpants. Some people wore nothing, and that were it, because it was that hot. At Killingley, it was that hot, we used to have locomotives fetching fresh water in halfway through the shift. to keep everybody, to replenish everybody's water with cool water. That's the only way he could keep going.
Why do you think so many men were institutionalised, working down the mines? It's something you said in the documentary.
When you left school in the 70s, and that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you got a job and you got it for life. And it's all you knew. And your work colleagues, they were your friends and your work colleagues, and you socialised as well as worked with them. And that's all you knew. You didn't know anything else. All you knew is working down the pit and hard graft. And so you do, in a way, you become institutionalised to that way of your life. It's just everything revolved around the pit.
Why do you think there was such a strong bond between the people?
I think because of the environment that you worked in. You couldn't get on with everybody, obviously, but everybody had to have each other's back. You had to get stuck in together. You can't. It's no good having one person that's on a team of men, 3 men on a tailgate rib, and one to do out. So they get told if they didn't do anything. So
how did it feel being the last deep miners in the UK?
Special but sad. Very, very sad. It didn't need to happen. And just lately, with the way you've just seen with British Steel, with the coke and having to import it and paying millions of pounds and get it from Australia, then you've got Drax Power Station importing wooden pellets all the way from Canada, and they're telling me that's more economical than burning coal. Just really, really sad, to be honest, because I'm all for clean energy. I'm all for... We used to go on about carbon capture. Now this government's spending £20 billion on carbon capture. I don't know what carbon capture they're going to capture, because they want not to burn gas, they don't want to burn coal, they don't want to burn any fossil fuels, so I don't know where the carbon capture is coming from, if I'm really honest with it. But if they've got their fingers out from up their arse years and years ago and done we used to invest in the 70s in carbon capture, and they were doing all the studies for carbon capture, but they stopped it. They stopped the money. So I do feel that we have to be greener and better, and it's better for the environment, it's better for people's health, etc. And we do have to get away from fossil fuels, but we could have done it at a much slower pace that would be much more beneficial for the country. Because now, the position we're in now, we're knackered. We're absolutely knackered. We're relying on gas from abroad, we're relying on everything. And this government's hell-bent on going hell for leather on solar and wind, which I'm not against having any solar, I'm not against having any wind. But you've got to have you've just seen in Spain and Portugal what's gone off, where they've lost all the power off the grid because they haven't got the infrastructure to support the solar and the wind.
One of the managers on the documentary said the UK will regret shutting its mines. Do you think that was true 10 years on? Absolutely,
100%. I think they can see it now. They've just tried to open the coking mine, the mine that would have produced coking coal in Whitehaven with British Steel. If the government does rescue British Steel, they're going to have to import that coking coal. We used to be able to get coking coal from anywhere in this country. We're far too reliant on other countries, and we shouldn't. We should be self-efficient. And the thing that they're racing to become green, okay, that's great. If India, China, United States and everybody else toes along and comes at the same speed as you, that's fine. But they're not. What's Trump said? Drill, baby, drill. They're not shutting coal mines in America, they're opening them up.
Yeah. What was it like being part of the documentary, and what did it feel like when your job was about to come to an end?
I think you can see in the documentary how sad it was the last evening. We never got to go down the pit, which were a shame. If we'd have known the night before that was going to be his last shift, we'd have come out with a different but we're expected to go down the next day. Just you think your life's come to an end. You think it's all over and done with. It's not, but you think it is. At the time, you think that's it. But there's other things. There's another life when it's yours. I never thought it at the time. I didn't think that that's how it would be, but there is.
Do you think you'll always be a miner at heart?
If anybody else, I retrained to become a telecom engineer, and I worked on the railway, and I've just recently, because of a situation within my personal life with my wife and my dad passing away, my mum having a stroke, and my wife's now got dementia, so I've had to stop working. And that were a big blow, because I was always determined to work until I got to retirement age of 67, and I didn't make it. I got to 63 before I had to finish, so sad, but needs must. Unfortunately, when my grandchildren are here, if you and my grandchildren were here now, you ask them what's the most important thing in life, they'd say to you, family. Family. They'd look at me, because that's all I ever say to them. Your family. Family's the most important thing in life.
Do you see any of the guys still?
I spoke to Russ Jones a few weeks ago, spoke to Andy Clayton a few weeks ago. They're now both working at Cap House as guides underground, which I'm sure they thoroughly enjoy and is very, very rewarding, teaching people about the history of mining. I've just had a phone call this morning from Rory. I've just missed it because we were doing this, so I'll speak to Rory. Gary Lane, one of the hardest men you'll ever meet, and he's now just had operations on his back and things like that. I speak to Gary on a regular basis. When I say hard, I don't mean hard as in fighting hard, I mean just proper minded, always worked till I'm 67. Gary's just after packing because of his back, so I keep in touch with some, but people have got their own lives to lead. They've moved on. I'm sure they'd all tell you saying they never thought they'd have another life after the pit shut, but there is.
What was your proudest moments?
Proudest moments, I think there's three things that stick out in my head. One was becoming a mines rescue member and becoming a captain at mines rescue team at quite a few collieries that I worked at. That was really proud. Scattered around this room is all different trophies I got from being a member at mines rescue team. Being one of the last people to work in the last coal mine in the country was a very proud moment, which I'm sure it was for everybody else that worked there, not just me. And 6 weeks before Killingley shut, Elena, which is Jung's daughter, my stepdaughter, is a geotechnical engineer, and so I asked the manager and the geotechnical department at Killingley if she could come to have a look at how they deal with roof bolting and how they measure movement underground, etc. So 6 weeks before it shut, I got to take Elena underground and take her around coal facing, etc. with the geotechnical department, which that gave me a big buzz. That was because it was only 6 weeks before end, and I do believe she'd be the last, call it civilian, to go underground other than a mining engineer, a miner or whatever, before it closed. Yeah, they're proud moments, yeah. I still remember 1977 going up that pit lane to Killingley Colliery like it was yesterday. I retrained and became a telecoms engineer at Railway doing fibre optics. That was a proud moment because me and Gary Lane, Dave Williams and a few other colleagues were the first people to ever splice what we call 432 ribbon fibre on the railway from Manchester to York. So that was another, away from mining, but that was another big proud moment. But it's how I tie it in because it's how I retrained to do it. And quite a few times I've been on railways, people have come up to me and say, I've seen you on documentary, are you Sheldon? And I've said, yeah, I am, yeah. So they're proud moments, yeah. And if they ever ask me, what do you do now? I always say, I'm a coal miner, but I've retrained, I'm now a telecoms engineer. I've got 6 oil lamps here from, basically from every pit that I've ever worked at. This was my last one from Killingley. On the last day we got to keep as oil lamps that we carried. There's checks that we used to go underground. So I've got one from every pit I ever worked at. So I'll always keep these. I've told kids never to sell them. So yeah, I'll always be a miner. I'll always be a coal miner till the day I die. And I'm sure most of the lads that work down pit and tell it saying, even though they've all moved on, all young ones with families, etc., that in their hearts they'll always be a coal miner.